Recognize that?
I've been looking at it for many years.
She must have been pharmacist in another life. Huh?
Well, welcome, Mr. Cruz.
Hi, I'm Brian.
Hi, Brian. Nice to meet
I'm
you.
Elaine.
Hey, how are you? Gary. Good, how are you? Gary.
What's your name again?
Yes. Hey, back there in the corner.
No longer work for the city police, so I can wear their.
That's right.
That was the first thing he did. My phones.
Yeah, I can still fit that on.
Very good.
Yeah, nice thing.
All right, you want to use my number?
Paul, the grass growth slowed or the grass died?
We tried to save as much as we could,
I tell you what.
but yeah, there were some spots I think I'm afraid that might not be coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah. My yard's.
Yeah. I asked the guys to not let it, just to let
Yeah.
it, get it up there and hopes it'll save it. But
Yeah.
yeah, they've got a couple of those hangers tried to grow some, they put some seed out just because that was the next step.
Better wait till October.
That's a waste. They just wasted money.
Yep.
What if it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, between that and the fact that the construction site that is yours doing, they dug us 3 ponds out there because they haven't been able to finish because of the rain finally came in after they moved to there. So we've got, the geese are loving it. Our operations guys are having a constant geese sweep.
Oh.
Keep on going to the pond and feeding off the grass seed that's out there.
Geese and airplanes don't mix very well.
Nope. This is small.
Yeah. I'm gonna call him back. After all, did you see that?
Not ready.
Oh, I just did. About our, well, you can see our dates on there, and I didn't know if our dates had changed, because we had picked out, what, 13th and the 14th of August? Well, I saw when he replied, and I was saying we could do it next week, because we don't have advertisements out. So that was out. Well, I replied just thinking I'm looking forward to working with him. Thank- No, he didn't. That was the problem. He only sent back next week and the week after. We're talking about 3 weeks. That was when we sat yesterday, we figured out the 13th and 14th were the best day. And we wanted to find out. Well, I just replied back. Asking you if those dates were still the ones we were trying to hold. Okay. I don't know if something had happened to this meeting. Okay. Okay, because I was holding those dates open.
She's.
Oh.
I'm not sure.
Yes, I'm supposed to get on the whole time.
Got me some water. Give you that some practice if you want. Oh,
Yeah, all fun.
You want plain or you want just a little something to put in it? No, that don't be best. We'll see.
Thank you. Thank you. We're still 5:30 tonight, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Bob would ask me. I think that's right. Thank you, Bobby.
Oh, yes.
He said, we gotta show up early. Didn't we?" I was like, I think we do.
That's all it's right. $530.
That's just trying to get my employees to drink more water. I add them a little flavor.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I finally got it.
Sound, it seems like it's been a day. Can't believe it.
You did on that.
That is 5:30 tonight.
Cool. I'm glad I thought I saw it.
Sounds like you're down there. Detroit.
Okay, being noon, seeing everyone here, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. A sign-in sheet for roll call is going around. If you haven't seen it, it's here somewhere.
Yeah, they've got it.
You got it? Okay.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion?
Second.
And a second, all in favor? Aye. The agenda passes. Next on the list is citizen comments. Any citizens need to comment?
Is there a limit to the topic?
No, I
If
suppose.
it's on the agenda,
airport-
Whatever.
if it's on the agenda.
Oh, it needs to be on the
It's on
agenda.
the agenda. No, I had a question about airport open house day, but we could just set it under that.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I ask you to please formally introduce our new member before we go any?
I would go
Sure.
do that. I'm so sorry. I meant to do that to begin. Everybody, this is Brian Cruz. He was the former deputy police chief, so I just assume everyone knows him. But he found greener pastures, so he left us a few months ago. And our former member, Mr. Cazort's term was up, and after 2 terms, it's not renewable. So he graciously agreed to become our new member. Brian, this is our chairman, Eric Larson, and member Helene Wharton. And beside you is Mr. Gary Fayhard and Kelly Wilson, I think you know. And I think everybody else in the room you might be familiar with.
His, just throw a little extra on there. His greener pastures is with a company that's one of our top users as far as a 135 operator. Their company comes in or calls in from, and they have to bring in from Nashville to come pick them up. So it's almost like they're relocating from Nashville. I don't know if you've gotten to take advantage of that, those flights or not.
I did go to Omaha when the Falls were in the College World Series and was able to.
So
fly.
business oriented, so
Yeah.
business.
So that was a tough job there. So, yeah, so I have, pretty nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. Mr.
Well,
Chair.
welcome to the group. Thank you. Next, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of June 27th. Everyone have a chance to look those over or have any comments on them?
There's a hard copy if anybody needs to, review or would like it.
Read them on my phone and didn't see anything out of order. I want to make a motion on that one.
My turn. I move approval of the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion
I second.
and a second. All in favor? Motion passes. Paul, you're up with the reports.
Okay. Go ahead and allude to number 3 real quick, because as is pretty customary this time of year, because of closing out all of city business, our financials are always delayed when it comes to the end of the FY. And so there won't be a financial except for what small amount I'm able to provide. But going on to the manager's report, you've got a hard copy there before you, but we'll review it somewhat. As mentioned on here, our because of the dry weather we had there for a little while, it doesn't seem like we ever had it now that based on the rain we're seeing in the last few days, but everything was pretty much dying off. So we had our maintenance crew hold tight on mowing just to try to save our grass that we did have. And so they've been able to get caught up a little bit. They appreciated that. They didn't care for the hot temperatures. They like to be able to get caught up and get some of the maintenance required on some of their equipment that was been beat up on pretty hard. We ended up with the last of the FY. So there's some other numbers down here that we'll go over here shortly. But with that, we finalized the budget, and this year on the budget, as mentioned, we did not receive any of the capital requests that we had, but we do always submit, and I submit every year with our budget, the airport capital improvement plan that's done with the state. That's a 5-year. We really go out as much as 10 years, but we do a hard 5 years, and we look at it every year with the state. As a matter of fact, I have a meeting with our consultant state next year. Review that. That's associated with grants. So those are kind of looked at a little differently to the city. They're looked at it on a as needed and on demand basis. So those are still out there as far as large capital projects. It's just more of the smaller capital that would come from directly from general fund. We didn't get on that list, but one of the things that we see that I think is probably the first time on an operating budget is that our income takes care of our operating expenses. Our forecasted income for the year is taking care of the airport's operating expenses, which is the first time I've been able to give a budget like that, which is pretty nice. That's
Are
even
there
includes-
any capital items that are critical?
We've been able to share a few pieces. But not as far as necessarily critical it was just more of planning ahead. So we didn't wait till something broke, trying to fix some things ahead of time, things of that nature. The biggest one was a piece of equipment that we've been looking for, a used piece of equipment that we've been having to share and hopefully take advantage of. But so far we've been able to make it work. One of the things that was good, as a matter of fact, our representative at the city council here at the table helped us out a little bit on voicing the fact that we were able to get our operation crew some needed pay increases, mainly because of the fact of pointing out that you're asking somebody that's moving a $200,000 piece of equipment with $12,000 worth of hazardous material, hooking it up to a $2 million piece of equipment, and you're paying them less than the guy that's pushing a button saying, "Would you like fries with that?" So you need a little balance there. So we've been able to get some of that pulled up there and was able to raise that, but also because of the fact that a lot of our job pool comes from students. And so they're not with us when it comes to part-time employees. They're not with us for any time. So we've got a revolving door. And so we need to be able to advertise it with a higher rate and things of that nature to attract employees now. But going on down, I put because of the end of the FY, I put down some numbers down there. It's kind of small for some, but you can see there that we had for the FY 22, we had the full numbers there for our operations. These are our operations broken down. A lot of times you just see the number, the total number, but these are broken down on the type of airplanes that are coming in to the airport. And you can see some changes. And even with the fact that this FY that just finished, we have a 5.38% increase in operations from the previous FY. There are some significant numbers in the middle that are negatives, which is kind of interesting just to watch that flow. Can't really explain it as much. It's just there's some significant drops in multi-engines, and discussing some of that. Some of it with standard multi-engine is training. So some of that was some delays that they had from our student traffic with the multi-engine traffic dropping down for those that are doing the training scenario. But another part of it is the multi-engine turbine, things like that. You don't train in that. That's more like your King Airs and things like that. That's how they're treated. Those would be for companies that are probably a little bit more budget conscious is maybe a better way to put it. Those are companies that are, those type pieces of equipment are really utilized by smaller companies that are needing like a Baron, something like that. You know, so it seems like they're being more affected by the economy, a little bit more affected by the raising, the fluctuation of fuel costs, things of that nature. So that's about the only reason we can find that there is some of that middle ground why we're losing that. Because if you look at Charles's ramp, the Mac Air's ramp, that's what you see out there a lot right now. That's the majority of what he's doing is multi-engine repairs right now. Those seem to be, they're taking care of their airplanes. It's not like that's the situation, but it's kind of hard to tell. I think it's that middle business is the middle business user from small to medium-sized businesses are struggling with the economy, which has limited some of their movement that way. But the bigger ones are not. But I mean, there's a small amount. You can see a small even with jet. It's a small percentage, 1%, but 1.5% decrease. But it does show that there is a somewhat of I hope not a trend, but we'll see. There'll be something to gauge, because if you continue on to the next, you can see that our fuel flow figures this past June this was not a good way to end your FY. It was one of the lower Junes we've had in a bit. It just kind of fizzled off there. As a matter of fact, Vivian was helping me double check some numbers because I was surprised at what little amount of jet fuel that we sold in June. It just really I don't know if that was because the same thing as other companies were at the end of their FY and so they were out of money, or what the deal was. I know back when I was with the state, it was either one or the other. It's like some departments had some money left, and so they were flying like crazy because they didn't want to lose that money. And then you had others that were not flying at all because they'd already used up all their funds. So it's hard to really tell. But June kind of fizzled there at the end as far as the fuel flow figures were concerned on that side of things, especially on the jet side. Operations, we're down just a smidge for the month compared to the month prior. You can see a small changes, but as overall the most of the single traffic took off, and the little multi, that was some of the students ramping back up for summer school, summer traffic and things like that. One thing that we did find that's interesting on these operations that do affect us, which is MTSU, they're having examiner issues there at MTSU as far as not having examiners available. So they've told some of their students, you're better off not to fly this semester because you're not going to be able to get a check ride taken care of. And so they're telling us that a lot of them this summer were told you're out for the higher levels, not necessarily privates, but the higher ones like multis and some others. You were just told them not to fly. You're better off not to fly. Some students chose to, that needed to, but that's a shame that's the scenario. Don't know if some of that's MTSU because they're cranking them out so fast. Others just because FAA is just not supporting the examiners like they should. I don't think the numbers are out there. I know that our local flight schools here have a hard time getting in with, and they're bringing in examiners from even out of state in some cases. They're having to fly to Olive Branch or something like that to get a check ride taken care of.
What's in light sports?
Light sport,
It's way up.
the reason why it's way up, you'll see, is because of Hawkins Academy. That's what they're utilizing as their primary trainer.
Okay.
So that's the reason for the major increase. Light sports also what's manufactured down as one of the pieces of equipment that's manufactured at Arion.
Right.
It's a smaller engine, meets
Yeah.
certain criterias, but the reason is the RVs and the Harmony that Hawkins Academy uses for their primary trainers are considered light sport.
I think the TechNam was as well, right? Yours TechNam.
Yes,
So that added to it. The flight training in those.
they're finding because those aircraft tip the gas for the
Yeah.
private pilots, they can operate that. As a matter of fact, we worked with Hawkins Academy on their fuel flow. They have to get any kind of discount from us, they have to go to the self-serve because they don't, I mean, when they're telling our guys, I need like 3 gallons in that wing and 2.5 in that wing, I mean, it's too much trouble for our guys. It costs me money to fuel their airplanes. So
Is there a landing fee on multi-engine
The
without?
the
fuel?
state of Tennessee has a restriction under Tennessee code annotated of 12,500 pounds.
No,
So he,
fee.
yeah, so you
Okay.
can't charge a landing or an operational ramp fee. Some air carriers get away with it by calling it different things at FBOs, but general aviation airports can't charge anything that's less than 12, which is about a King Air 200. It's a good idea. It gives you an idea of the size or weight capacity of 12.5. So even some of the smaller light jets don't qualify.
I'm only asking the question because it was off. Economy is a big piece of it. But if you're flying in here somewhere and you're in a King Air, you fly into Shelbyville or do you fly into Tullahoma? And $100 landing fee, 0 landing fee. I'd go to Tullahoma. So I think it's one of those that I don't know what the right answer is, but it is a difference.
For like a King Air, for example, we don't have a landing fee for a King Air because of the size of a King Air, but if you do get bigger than a King Air, then we do have those fees, but those fees are waived with a fuel purchase, minimum 75-gallon fuel purchase. We waive any type of ramp fee or landing fee, even for the big ones.
Or it's like a 350,
What's that?
King Air 350.
King Air 350 does fall in that category. So like for Wheels Up, we'll charge them that. You don't see many of the 350s that are running for private use, but there's some.
To provide a little perspective on the fuel flow, our company runs 5 FBOs from Middletown, Ohio to Mississippi, and we're seeing the same trend.
Are you?
June, we were a little off from June of the previous year. July fell off the map from July of the previous year. That's across all the FBOs from, Ohio down through Mississippi. So I think we're seeing it kind of a nationwide trend. I told Paul when I looked at these numbers, wow, this is exactly what we're seeing at our FBOs too. Hoping that that's just the summer lull.
That's when the vehicle fuel went up too.
Mhm. Yeah,
Went back up.
and that's a good point. We do have an increase in fuel prices between this year and last year as well.
And you can still see through the business usage and stuff. There's still new and return customers that are out there. A lot of our return list on the left-hand side is these are regular customers, but it's still nice to see new names, new companies. And you're seeing some that are local companies that you're seeing coming in. Some of those guys are coming in for maintenance. Some of them are coming in just because of what you said. They'd rather use this than go into Nashville, rather change and something like that. Those numbers are extremely different.
Right.
Now, picking us between us and Tullahoma,
Yeah, I get it.
that's a lot of times that is I try to explain to our staff, we sell an experience here. So that's the biggest product is an experience because fuel prices, other little fees here and there, they're minimal difference compared to what, if we provide the proper service, provide to our customers.
Well, this is, I ask you because of all the FBOs you run, do airports market? You've got these transit
Sure.
flights that have to stop somewhere for fuel and
Right.
things. How do you market that? Let's come to Shelbyville instead of going to Nashville or Smyrna or wherever.
Very good question, and a lot of FBOs struggle with that. The best place to market for your charter aircraft and
Yeah.
any company that has a fleet of aircraft is at MBA Schedulers and Dispatchers Conference. Paul's familiar with that one. The FAA has a license for dispatchers and schedulers. You have to maintain that with continuing ed. So every 2 years, you have to renew your license, and they all go to this schedulers conference. So set up a booth there. It's one of the largest aviation conferences in the nation every year. And that's where you get to know these people and you try to meet as many of them as you can, tell them what you got going on, why it would be to their advantage to stop at your airport versus somewhere else. And it's a long-term progress. We've been going, our company, for the 20 years that I've worked there, and you make relationships over time. So, dispatchers are notoriously difficult to get them to change because their job's on the line. If I screw up at the
Yeah.
FBO.
Yeah.
Their person is coming back after that dispatcher, not after us. So they're very, very slow to make a change, but then very loyal once they do. So that's one great way. Your fuel provider can also provide what they call airport pairs. So they look at all of the traffic that's flying above us, where they're starting, where they're coming, and they can get pairs of airports that are flying over your head to Tullahoma instead of here. Where did that airplane come from? Is there a trend? Are there a bunch of airplanes coming that way? And then you'll find what corridor you're in, and then you can market to those directly. So,
And one of our corridors that we fit a lot of, for some reason, seems to be coming from the Iowa area, that upper Midwest where they're headed to Florida. And it just happens to be, this is just about the right time that even though they don't quite need to fuel, their passengers need a break for a minute.
Right.
And so they have a tendency, because it doesn't seem to make sense why some of them stop here. But that it would just happen to fit that right circle on timing and get them to come here versus somewhere else. And we've gotten some regulars on that we'll see on most companies. We've done some advertising and been a booth participant at Schedulers and Dispatchers in the past. It's hard to justify some of the ones that are out on the far west coast or something like that. But when they're close enough to us, we will definitely advertise there. One of the things that I'm still driving for that I hope to start promoting is with having developed a service center for turbines. Because a lot of times for those larger aircraft, what concerns them is that if they land at your field, is there a place if there's an issue, they can be taken care of?
that's exactly right. That's
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that, we don't have that. And that's one of the things I'm working towards. And we've got somebody lined up, assuming everything stays as is. Once the taxiway is built, they're one of our first customers that's going to be building on the taxiway that's coming with the $6 million, part of that $6 million that we've talked about before. When that taxiway is built, we're building our hangar across. That's a city, part of the city facility. On the other side, on the south side, is a turbine shop that's supposed to be coming in. And that will be definitely something I'll be able to start advertising and really push. They'll do their own advertising, but they have their own customers. But we'll be able to advertise that when you come in here, you're able to get taken care of if there's an issue. And we've started providing smaller and smaller and little small things to add to the service as well.
The final thing that I would add to that, you brought up fuel pricing. We find fuel price is always an issue everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But it is not at the top of the list. They'll make their decisions based on operational and logistical differences way before they make a decision based on fuel price. It's only if you're inordinately out of range that would factor.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
You'll see here on the services, the hangar rents looks a little odd. Looks a little down. That's just because people have paid ahead at the end of the year and things like that. The way we're reporting now is based on really what came in the drawer and not necessarily what is continually recharged. So that's why that number looks a little lower than it would be usually. We did receive some fuel orders, even though the fuel numbers were down a little bit. We did have to do some repair work on the grounding cable there at the fuel farm. I think I've probably mentioned that before. I think it's a game. They want to see how far out they can go and then just turn it loose and watch it roll back up, and it looks like a bird's nest when you've been fishing. We did have to do a little work on our avgas truck just because of age of one of our emergency shutoff valves that has to be activated before you can pump. Had to have some work done on it. That's just because of its age. We got it repaired, but now we're looking for a replacement for it to get it fixed. Because we've got a company that is building some pieces for our fuel farm. And once they come in, they're going to do some work on our fuel truck for us at the same time. There's no reason to pay for somebody specialized to come out and put that piece on.
Did we not, excuse me,
Go ahead.
I thought when we changed fuel providers, they were giving us a truck as well.
They gave us the jet truck. This is on our avgas truck.
Oh,
The
okay.
avgas truck
Okay.
is owned by the city. It was
Okay.
purchased by
All
the
right.
city
Got it.
about
Got it.
9.5 years ago. It was a used piece of equipment when they bought it.
Okay. I get it.
The, standard maintenance that would go from our crew vehicles there and beyond. Quonset hut door repair. I think I can just leave that on the list all the time. I think I will until such day as the dozer shows up to remove it. There will be hangar door repair on there. Or the flight instructors now need, instead of playing on video games, they need to go out and go to the gym, I guess, maybe instead. The trees that were mentioned before, that mentioned at the last meeting by Charles, we removed those trees. Those are gone. I have not put his $500,000 ramp out there. That's gonna be, that's later on down the road, but it is in our plan in some form or fashion. It's just not high enough on my list yet. It hasn't made the ACIP meeting, but it is on the airport layout. We've also gone about removing some other trees around the areas too that are showing some either disease or just some issues of potential for breakage and things like that we wanted to get rid of. That we will be replacing some this fall but they'll be in better locations. Mentioned earlier about the mower repairs just because of typical hard use this time of year. We replaced our picnic tables out back there. They were looking a little rough. And so the fact that in an article in local Good Times, I invited everybody to come out and sit and watch airplanes. We figured we needed to make the picnic tables look more inviting. So those are nice. That's been needed for quite some time, but we bit the bullet and went ahead and got new ones out there. We had to add a little temporary sprinkler system to try to save that grass around it. And we also, it just happened to be, I don't know if it was because of overuse or what, but our one out front, you can see some of our bushes up front look pretty rough because our drip system we had to be repaired. Unfortunately, we didn't know it needed to be repaired until the bushes started looking bad. That's a very broad brush. I could get into details as far as some of the maintenance on the vehicles and, I mean, not vehicles, but the mowing equipment, things like that. But I think that's a bit more than you really want to get into.
Thank you, Paul. If we don't need any motions for that. Next on the agenda.
Motion to accept all reports.
Oh, okay.
and defer
Well, there we
the,
go.
Financial report.
So moved.
So moved. And a second. Okay, all in favor? There we go. Passes. Thank you. Now on to old business. MTSU lease amendment.
Okay. The reason I asked to have that put on was, as you're aware, we had the lease request. The city received that and put it in and yes, for lack of a better term, they acknowledged the receipt of the letter is how they went about it. But we were looking at, and I'm still looking to do an amendment, but the issue is, I think, they stated once before, and I think the same thing for Azure, if I remember correctly, is that the final amendment, once they know exactly how much land they need when they're done. So it's whether or not we need to wait for that amendment or go ahead and amend and put the 4.8 in there. I think there was still a little bit of that logistic because our city, what triggered this, I'm said before, our city treasurer was a little hesitant without having something more official to charge for the next piece of land. Because they're due for a payment for the initial approximately 16 acres. Now they're looking for that next piece. So
MTSU has not requested an amendment, but they have requested to pay the full amount for 4.8. They're very willing to pay for it. And so I have no objection. I think Kay has a little bit of concern, but we just need to circle back around with her. It's really no need. They're willing to pay. You're not going to know what to do as an amendment until they draw out what the 4.8 acres will be.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a little bit from now. So
it's mainly, this is nothing voting wise. It was more just to keep everybody up to par, up to date with what's going on. Reason why it's still kind of floating around out there. They also, not sure how long before they'll know some things because their numbers that they came in with their budget, they blew their first number out of the water.
Mhm.
So they're having to go back and punt to come up with some numbers. I think they missed it by about 22 million. So what their wish list, I think now they're trying to go with what they can get away with, I think now, instead of what they really want. So again, I don't really think they need that 4.8 acres, but They want it just in case.
Yeah, Paul, if you don't mind, let me just bring, because we have a
Sure.
new,
Absolutely.
we have a new member who knew some of what was going on when the city actually did the lease agreement with MTSU. Part of that was an additional, they had an option 1 year to let us know if they wanted additional 4.8 acres. We have an exhibit in the lease that shows that. It was an L shape. I don't know if you remember having that. It was an L shaped with a quite of a long, what we call the bottom of the L running along 231. They have come back to us, and before they actually formally requested and to let us know they were taking the option, was they are exploring, they want to basically cut off the L and go straight back more, which not necessarily your airport director's favorite thing, but the city council likes that because they get more 231 frontage. So everybody at the council here seems to be okay with that, but we're waiting on, as they're doing all their drawings and whatever, come back and show us exactly how they want that 4.8. But they were entitled under the lease agreement and that option provision to have 4.8 extra acres if they so desired, but they had to let us know by July 1st of this year. And they've done that. Dr. McPhee sent that letter. We presented it the last time. We put it on the city council agenda and they just acknowledged it. So we've got the record. Everybody knows that they're entitled to the 4.8.
And Brian, since this is an ongoing project that's probably gonna be, going on for a long time, I'll send you the lease, so you have a copy of that, so you can be familiar with it. So I'll send you a copy of that lease.
Does everybody still have theirs? Or if you need a new copy, we can send it
I'll
to
just
you.
send it out to everybody.
I think we had a digital copy at some point.
I would think you do, yeah.
I think I.
I can just send it back out. It doesn't
Okay.
ever hurt to have two of them.
Sure. Okay, so no action really needs to be taken on that. Thanks for the information. We'll move to new business. First on new business is Azure lease. And I'm thinking that's what we have here.
Yes, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because we can't lease it, but we are getting ready to, so that as soon as we're closed, we've been able to close on, as soon as we're able to close on that piece of property, which is, there's a layout that I'll give you there of where that piece is. We've come to an agreement with Celebration Feeds and their parent company, which is Burkett Nutrition out of Bowling Green, Kentucky. We've come up with a final layout. I think I might have alluded to it before, because of the mistake of the contractor. We were able to get back in negotiations because they tore down some of their things thinking they had it. And that was part of Azure's problem. They designed on something that we didn't have, and they knew we didn't have, but there were some issues there. They need that piece of property for a couple of reasons. One, they need the dirt to fill in because of the existing grade that you're trying to get to. They don't have enough dirt, so they need it as a dirt site. They need about 5,000 more square yards of dirt, but they want to pull it from that piece, which will lower that piece. And then in turn, they want to put a parking lot on. So, but the thing is it's all about timing. Their equipment right now is sitting still because of mud. All that dust and dirt that they were fighting with, they were having to constantly change their filters out there for a while and clean them out. Now they're sitting still because they can't go anywhere with all the mud, but they're also out of dirt. They need some more dirt to fill in with. So, until such time as we can get this closed, which hopefully is, it's in Ginger's office there, and they have to go through all the fun title search and all that good stuff. Nothing ever goes quickly, but we're trying. And so they're trying to, so the idea behind presenting it now with this lease is so that as soon as it closes, that part will already be taken care of. If that makes sense. So go ahead and present it so that you can look at it. But this is also, I brought out a somewhat generic lease. We've never leased for a parking lot before. And that's what and so I just put one out there, sort of massaged it somewhat, but if there was something else that you wanted to look at, see if you wanted to confirm that the rate stayed the same. That's the reason why I'm bringing it before you, so you can look at some of the terms, look at what our standards are, if we want to adjust, not adjust. That's the reason why it's been brought before you, so we can massage some of the details now so that it moves quickly once the closures take care of. Am I making sense there?
So essentially, the lease is a ground lease template that would be not any real difference between that and somebody who's gonna build a hangar.
Well, except for the fact that it is non-aeronautical lease on airport property. So we do have to acknowledge that, even though the parking is for aeronautic purposes, I guess, but it is for automobiles. It will be limited to automobiles. They can't decide all of a sudden that they want to go put an airplane over there because they're going to be outside so there's some, maybe some security issues if there's things need to be put in there. I even alluded to, because we take into consideration on a ramp, derelict aircraft. I even put that in there as, if you got a derelict car, they got to get rid of it. Does yours got to get rid of it? Different things of that nature, but also, any improvements, do you want them to pave it? Do you want them to leave it gravel? Do you want them to put security lights up? They currently have two different plans laid out there. Their current plan is paved parking lot with security lights. That's what their current design is. It's a little bit larger than the space that we actually have because of the final improvements and final layout of the piece of property. There's a little bit of adjustments they're going to have to make, but parking lots are pretty easy to adjust. Now, what they've got is a few islands and some things in there like that. I think that would be simple for them to remove those to make up for any spaces that they may not have now. But if you go with your existing rate, I give you that lease as an option. The existing rate had them paying $19,965.75 for the first year, and then a 3% increase. That's just what you guys have got in your standing rate that was from October of 21 for aeronautical. Want to leave it saying the same thing, or you want to do more, do less, whatever? This is the time to discuss it.
We didn't have a lease amount for non-aeronautical versus aeronautical, right? We just had a ground lease amount.
We've never, we have, the only thing that we have here that's a non-aeronautical lease is with Enterprise. And that's a whole different kind of animal because it's a mixed use of indoor business space here and this square footage, and then some space outside where they have some outside. So that's the only thing that we do have. This is sort of its own, this is a new animal.
I guess what I'm asking is the standard rates and fees that we approved in 2021 does not call out whether it is for a ground lease, does not call out whether it's aeronautical or non-aeronautical.
It's all aeronautical, like.
Does it
Whatever,
say
just for
aeronautical, or
It was just looked
It's
at
just
as,
aeronautical.
it was just looked at as aeronautical, because if you recall those couple of times we've had in the past, we've had people come in wanting to lease space out front for a restaurant.
Right.
And those were going to be looked at,
Very differently.
they were going to be looked at as and on a case by case basis. We tried to establish something for a non-aeronautical, and it was pretty much determined that we needed to look, that the board at the time decided it was best to look at them on a case by case basis. Because I think at the time, especially during that time, rates were going through the roof. People couldn't keep up. So I think they didn't want to handcuff themselves at that time. So this is a different.
What's the lease
Different
term?
I've thrown out there 4 years because I didn't want it to be considered a long-term lease, because the idea is that, and the reason why we're doing it completely separate and not just make an amendment to their existing 40-year lease is because this is a temporary parking lot that's providing services for their temporary building. It's providing student parking for the students that are using the 5,000 temporary dispatch and for that existing first phase. Once they're done, once the main campus is built, they don't need this parking lot anymore. It's not in their design. They don't need it. That temporary building will go away, so that all it will be auto. So I don't want to give that piece of property away to them or put it into a long-term lease, because we want to put hangars on it eventually.
And it'll be paved, probably.
I told them I said, why? But I think one of them was mainly because he just doesn't want to risk, I guess, with the lease, getting a chip on a car or student complaining or this or that. I think they just want it to look nice and neat, I guess, too. And down the line, MTSU's paying for it. So Azure wants it to, as far as they're concerned, MTSU's paying for it down the line.
Right. But what's the 1.3 acres?
What is it?
How much?
The 1.3 acres is, that's the 57, a little over 57,000 square feet, which comes out to that 19,000.
I'm sorry. How much are we paying for it?
How much are we paying? We're paying $75,000.
That's,
And it's been appraised, thank God.
It was appraised back a while back, so if it was appraised today, it might be even worse than that, but everybody's happy, the owner's happy, we're happy. They don't have to mow it. It's not being used, so it works to their benefit. They're getting a shot in the arm from the feed store. They're not having to mow it.
I'm just speaking off the cuff now, okay? So I'm just,
That's why it's on the agenda.
but a $20,000 a year lease on a $75,000
I'll take that.
property, I'd take that in a minute. For 4 years and you get it back and it's paid.
Mhm.
Sounds like a pretty sweet deal. And everybody's happy. Is that right?
And
So, but you said you're going to probably put hangers on. Right?
that's what I would.
Okay, so,
I'll say that about any blade of grass. out
well,
there.
I understand. I'm just raising the question, is there anything that we should do now to prepare the site?
Yeah.
So that 4 years from now, it's ready for hangars? As far as when you're building the pad or how thick the asphalt
Right,
is
graded asphalt.
or whatever, so that it actually enhances the value to us when we take it back.
It's a great question for an airport consultant that's sitting right behind.
I would say
They have one here.
the main thing at this point in time would
Yeah.
probably be looking at grades and level, because there's FAA standards you're gonna need to get out to the taxiway. That would be the main concern I'm looking at now. Obviously in the future, depending on what's built out there, is gonna affect the foundation. So I think it's kind of hard to establish what that's gonna be and have that in place. But grading would be the main thing at this point in time.
But if it's T hangers, if the asphalt's thick enough or whatever, could we just put up the hangers and then it's already pre-paved and all for the planes to go in and out without having to redo it?
Enclosed T hangers, I've never seen that with asphalt before. You could look at like a shade port hanger, which is very similar,
Mhm.
but I've seen cases where it's, the footings are just, you could go in core footing
Yeah,
to do columns. So that may be an option.
I'm just
Mhm.
thinking, okay, just,
One of the things that's already on the plans that for sure is that they would be putting proper fencing up around that parking lot. So it's two different scenarios. There's fencing separating the parking, but there's also fencing that's going to be put up separating the new feed store property and ours. So that's already part of the design. That's part of what they're looking into. Because right now, this parking lot is outside the fence according to the way, if you look at it. So that would be one other thing that we've looked at with Azure, is making sure where the proper gates are located, things of that nature, to try to alleviate future cost for us. But,
How many of those ports could you put on there? What he was talking about, like a little carport.
well, there just happens to be a photo I provided for you guys of what,
Yeah.
that's downtown Island, for example, in Knoxville. That little photo right there is a good idea of what plane ports look like. They have, I think, almost 100 there, 100 airplanes under shade ports there. And that's part of our next request. We're putting something like that in there.
that looks like asphalt.
Yeah, so those are, now, sometimes people will build those with the intention over time to convert it to a fully enclosed T hanger. In that case, I think you definitely want to do a traditional concrete floor, but for something like that, I think it makes perfect
So
sense.
that's a possibility, or we could do the same thing, which is lease it to, it's whether or not in this particular scenario, it would be something that I think it would make sense for the city to build. versus leasing out the square footage and having another private hangar that looks just like the ones that are behind or in front of it in the case, which is also an option. But if we could convince the city to put those in there, then yeah, they could probably, erect in an acre, a little over an acre, counting transition space, probably at least 20, 30, 20. It's a half
Depending
of
on
decorations,
how it's laid out, but.
something in that neighborhood, at least probably in the 20 neighborhood. And you can get probably $325 a piece, depending on the size. You can see on that drawing or that photo, there's some that have a different
Yeah.
width and height. And then, the bigger you
Yeah.
go, the bigger, that's when you start putting in something a little bit bigger, like a Navajo or something like that in a space like that,
Right.
that has cover, or our 900 Echo Yankee, who would love to have something covering his airplane, which is that single engine turbine that's sitting out there on the
Yeah.
that TBM. I mean, that's $1 million in the rain. He would love to see it under something covered like that. He would pay whatever to keep that airplane covered
It
up.
was a sweet deal to me, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. I mean, we're purchasing this property as a convenience to Azure/MTSU. It's
Well,
not,
I mean, also for me, because I'm gonna ask for any piece of property I can find. I saw that that there was a rent sign down there, and I'm hoping that we might be able to get a hold of that land. I know I'm gonna put it on the ALP. I'll get anything that I can get that's touching this airport.
Landing hangers.
That's right.
I mean, it seems to make sense to me. The amount of the rent seems to just about pay for the cost of the purchase of the property over the length of the lease that you have proposed, which seems pretty good. So at the end, we've got a developable piece and essentially our skin has been paid.
Yeah.
I mean,
He's needing it as low, he'll get it as low as, it will be just about runway grade. Now, whether or not there'll be a little transition in between that, because he needs as much of that dirt as he can get.
right.
So that is a little bit higher spot. That's what he's hoping for, is he's hoping to be able to get as much as 5,000
That helps us.
yards out of there, which helps us because it brings it to grade.
It's great.
So it is a wind all the way around. It's just,
Okay.
you guys see what terms you might want or anything like that, because it is something new. It is non-aeronautical, which is a little different.
Right.
Have you looked around at other airports to see what, since it is non-aeronautical, to see if we are in line with prices for non-aeronautical, or should we research that first?
The only one that I know that's put parking in was like Nashville. I mean, and then you can't really compare B&A to here.
Right.
Most airports, they don't. They put their own parking in. They haven't had a tenant that's paid for a flat spot to put a parking lot in that I'm familiar with at a general aviation airport and anywhere in the nearby area. This is unusual.
Most of your non-aeronautical use is going to be for some type of business.
Are there restrictions
Restaurant
in
or
there?
something.
Are there restrictions in there to where they are not going to be permitted to use this for like commercial purposes, where they could be making a significant profit off of this, even though they're leasing it for us for 19,000 per year? And the idea is to get the property that we've purchased paid off. Is there anything in there that prohibits them from, profiting off of that even more? Like if they wanted to open up a parking lot and start charging people to park here on airport property
Parking
and,
ride.
park and ride and make significant profits off of something that we're leasing at a
That
lower
can
rate.
be added to. If we can definitely adjust that.
Sure, that's part of the purpose. We can put that in.
Right,
Or
adjust that. 'Cause right now, it's just,
Yeah, this is.
it's just
this is what
stated
they
as,
use as.
yeah, it's just stated in the existing lease that I've given you as a parking lot. I mean, that's what it's stated as existing use or the intended use. But yes, if they wanted to do that, I'm sure what they're doing is, they'll turn around, they're paying the lease and then I don't know if it would be considered a pass through the MTSU or if they're going to charge MTSU. I'm sure they're not doing it for free with MTSU.
If I remember
Right,
right,
your students are going to pay a parking pass.
Right.
Azure's other lease contains a provision that MTSU can assume that lease as well, right? Is that in this
I
one?
don't want that. I don't want TSU in that.
Okay.
That's the part of the reason why we're doing a separate lease versus just addending the existing 40-year lease that they have with the about 6.5 acres.
Right.
because we want this to go away when it's not needed. I want it to go back to the airport. And that 4-year term seems to be sufficient for for them to be able to build and be able to
Right.
have enough of the phases built on the existing piece to have it done.
Okay.
I'm sure it can come back and amend it if we needed to, or cancel it if we needed
Right.
to.
Okay.
If they're done with it, don't want to pay for it anymore, the airport will be happy to get a paved lot to put those shaped playports on.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to lay that out, see how we can make that fit, and what the highest and best use for that piece of property would be.
So you're asking the board to approve or modify this lease so that it is ready to go for signature at such time as the sale of the property is complete. Is that correct?
That would, yes, because we can't really, you can't lease anything you don't own. So,
Right.
It's really just, it's.
And this saves it from coming in front of the board again and wasting
Right.
another
This was
30
the hope
days.
that you guys
Yeah.
would address it, adjust, make any adjustments, any recommendations, like Brian said, if we need to change the terminology to make sure there's no other type of, like, you put a turnstile out there or park, pay to park kind of scenario.
You just put that it's to be used for MTSU. That's what it's supposed to be used for, right? For,
I assume we can put it that straight.
this will be very.
The only issue I have is, unless I missed something, I haven't had a chance to read this.
Sure.
Without reading it, I'm not going to vote on approving it.
Right.
And it's got blanks in it,
Yes.
so
This is a working copy for you guys to do what you need to do.
that's where I would be. It's a
Yes.
working copy, but
Under number 3, it says the year 2043.
Yeah, that's from where I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so I stole
Okay.
this off of another piece.
So they would not be signing that.
No,
Okay.
it's, because if you continue on down, you'll see that there's space where I actually adjusted it to 4. I hope I did. I did it on my computer. I hope I printed the right one. But, adjusted some of it to 4. There's a lot of little areas I'm sure that need to be cleaned up. This is by no means a final copy, because I was just throwing that out there as a scratch pad for you guys to come up with whatever terms that you might want to look at, because like I said, I keep saying it is something, it's out of the norm.
I'm happy to say that based on what we've discussed, I'm very happy with it. Subject to seeing a final lease that's got everything filled in and a chance to read it, all of that stuff, but it's general provisions of 4 years and $20,000 a year.
They didn't flinch when I mentioned that it would be at the same rate that they have right now. So but that's up to you if you want to adjust that, if you want to still stick with that and stick with the percentage increase. And also, I don't know for sure. I used Azure as a placeholder as well, because I don't know if it's running under a different partnership or anything like that too, as far as even the company name. But Azure is the same people that doing the development and need the piece of property.
I'd be interested in the feedback from our member, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, I definitely want to ask and read this. It looks like there's a lot of inconsistent terms as to how.
Oh, I'm sure. I have no doubt, because of the fact that it's trying to make a long-term lease into a short-term lease, and then also convert something that's heavily weighted towards aircraft. I'm sure I've got the word aircraft and automobile mixed up and other things like that. I know that I'll have to go through and
I
figure
think
that.
he just told you that you're not going to get Ginger's job.
Trust me, I don't want it. I do not want that job.
Will your eyes be on this, Ginger?
It would be.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I agree, it's a little bit early. We wanted to bring it on early. You're
Yeah.
not gonna be, because we still gotta go to council. We don't have it ready for them. We can do it in September. We'll be good about the time. We'll have it closed, the property by then.
Well, it sounds like we
Y'all
don't,
had some great input. We appreciate everything y'all said today.
okay. It sounds like we don't need to make a motion or take action on this. Then we've provided the input. Is that correct?
That input, and then you already have a working copy and know what we can, and be prepared if there's some things that we need to adjust. We'll take what was said today, of course, make those adjustments, and then bring a clean copy to you on the next meeting and have that ready. And hopefully the closure will not be done at that same time. We'll see.
Okay. Any other questions on the Azure lease before we move to number 2? No? Okay, so number 2 is grant request clean ports. Kind of fits right in there. It does.
That sounds like somebody was reading ahead when they brought that up. That's another reason why I asked Matt to be here as well with Garver because of the request. Go ahead and show you what I alluded to it. I've alluded to it in the past, but I'll bring it up. I'll review it again. This area, this space right here, which if you recall, we had Wayne Hitchcock come in and ask about, because we have some temporary tie downs there now, and asked about them getting pushed and moved. And this is continuation of there. It's not because of that, but it just happened to be that we had temporary there because we knew that we hoped in the future, this is what we were looking at. Is in this particular area here, putting in the plane porch, which I gave you somewhat of an example. I don't know if you had a chance to draw out anything or not for a layout, but
Scott would have read that, but.
You do have-
Nothing.
do you have one handy? Did you bring a hard copy?
No, I don't believe I do.
So I printed that out so you can get an idea of what they look like. What you're seeing here is, so from the road, when somebody's driving by, it'll look almost exactly the same. It'll look the same as what's there. So it's not, when somebody's driving by, but what it is open. They're they're much more inexpensive. The price we've estimated so far is about $375,000 to do this project as a whole. And one of the things that we're looking at as well is putting that on this with the solar as well, and not even having it completely off the grid. So any power that's provided there for the users or for lighting, security purposes, because it will stay lit all the time, unlike these other hangars, which can be turned on and off because of needing that added security. Because it is open, we would have it lit and have it done with a solar and battery powered setup so that it's not drawing on city grid at all. And we've been assured by some other companies that Scott got to meet, and I think some of the other members got to meet the salesman that's pushing that kind of stuff this past weekend. And that's one of the areas that they're going to be their first test base, and to make sure that they can draw from it. There is a possibility he's looking into it, whether or not that same solar panels that can be done during this grant might even be able to run the power off the T hangers as well, trying to see if that surface will work. But the idea is to be able to put 5 aircraft in that area. They will be open one end on this farther end, which you can see it. It's sort of a depiction of it in that drawing on the far left. There's one side that looks a little taller than the rest. And that would be the same scenario here. This one would be, because it is going straight across, and be a little easier to work on with bigger aircraft, would be able to have one that will be a little bit taller in that area so that somebody with a taller tail will be able to fit in there, fit something in a little easier. And also have a little bit larger wings. Our existing T hangers are 42 foot wide, but for example, the twin Bonanza that David Brown bought, he can't fit it in his T hanger. It's too big. But something like this, he could put it in. Right now, he's got it in the Mac Air. Everybody's happy. It's not that big a deal. But if we had another scenario like that, they would be able to fit it in there. Same thing for the TBM that's sitting out on the ramp right now. If there were in this scenario, if he's still here and still has that, when that's completed, he would be able to fit in this unit with no problem if he's willing to make that turn. Some people aren't, just because of the hassle factor associated with having to back something in, because this is unlike those are shown there are pull throughs. This would be a single sided, and you would back through. It'd still be open, but you would have to back your aircraft in. That's the best we can do. That's just utilizing a piece of property that's for right now. It's just sitting there collecting mud for the most part when it rains, and we got some airplanes halfway sitting on it. And this will clean it up, fix it up, and add another form of income, which should be about 300 and about below $300 a month for those.
That's gonna be adjacent to the property you've been talking about, the 1.3 acres.
Yes, this is the 1.3 is right here, so you'll actually be driving right next to it. So if we end up doing that same route there, I mean, it makes sense. It all falls, and they're all very similar and be right in that same area.
305. So how many?
5.
5.
And the bigger one would be more than that.
Just 5. It's not 5 on one side and 5 on the
No,
other.
we
like
can't make
T
that
hanger.
fit.
You can't.
Because of the layout, the terrain difference, there's a big ditch right here that's got a drainage. This is higher, so we can't make that back section work. So we can only fit 5. But this would allow for We'll do some market analysis as well and make sure that, see what all we can get for plane ports. Some of you probably seen them and just didn't realize you saw them when you were driving down Murfreesboro Road and saw them with DNA for many years. They were over there on that end by the guard at B&A, and they removed them when B&A decided they didn't want general aviation airplanes there anymore and kicking everybody to Johnson too. And they started taking them out piece by piece, but they were there for a long time. And so plane ports have been around. It's not like I'm reinventing the wheel. I'm just trying to find a way to squeeze them in, make it work.
It costs how much?
About 375, something like 325, somewhere in that neighborhood. We got to get an estimate on that. There was a person that looked into it on a private basis, and he was going to be able to do it for 300. But I think, some of that's because we're utilizing, this request is going through bipartisan infrastructure law money, which doesn't necessarily have the justification, but does have some of the same requirements, where a private individual doesn't have some of those requirements. So there's going to be a little bit that's why there's an added cost to that, because of some of the requirements for FAA and some other things like that. But also this corner right here has a bit of a concern that I met with a contractor that was looking at the asphalt. He was a bit concerned about this wet corner. So he was just, when he was willing to give a windshield appraisal, he said, I would have to bid high in that corner because he didn't know what was there, just because of what he saw on the surface. He was afraid that it might end up like where the DC-3 sitting and it's all marsh. The DC-3, if for those that weren't around, when that ramp was expanded over there, you couldn't see the dozer. They kept digging until they could find something hard enough to grab a hold of. And they kept going down and down and down. So they're afraid that something similar like that might happen over there, was that it would be mush.
So how much is the grant?
Grant request will be whatever,
375?
that was what we.
100%.
No, we do 90%. It would 90% from the bipartisan infrastructure law, and then there would have to be a local share, and then aeronautics does a share on that too. So it'd be 95 and 5. So our local share would be 5%.
Of 375.
Yes.
So those grants don't have the restriction about building revenue generating? Like
Bill Bunny does not. No.
That's great.
The problem is they're just small.
And it's slow.
Yeah. Yes. Very slow. Yes, it's, if you think FA is slow now, you add another layer of having to go through that money. Oh.
It's great for the airport, but let me just say it, for the country, I'm not sure giving away all this money is great.
Men.
But since they're gonna do it anyway.
I agree, agreed.
Yes, I'm kind of in that same boat.
That's interesting,
That's
the
a
way
good
it
deal.
slopes on the one side. So you put smaller single engine aircraft on the one side, and then it would be bigger for, say, a Navajo or something on the other side.
That's the way I'm asking the consultant to look at it, just because of the fact that once you turn the corner up there at the D hangars, they would be able to go straight. And it just allows for somebody, even when they're taxiing out, they would be able to taxi straight out, and they would not have to make the turn. So that would allow for more space for a larger aircraft, to be a little easier for a larger aircraft, or it could be somebody that just doesn't want to make that turn and is willing to pay more to park in a bigger spot.
Would it be significantly more expensive just to make them all that tall instead of?
I just don't think that people that are going to be willing to turn around they're going to have the same issue Wayne has, even though that's proper separation. I still don't think they're going to want to.
We're gonna be widening space between the existing T hangar now and what will be the edge of this building.
Right.
So there's gonna be a bit more room, but yeah, I think if you've got bigger aircraft, obviously that'd be a bit more challenging. I mean, really, most of the aircraft you see under these shade ports are smaller, single engines.
Yeah.
They're looking for anything just to mainly get them out of the sun.
Right, yeah.
Or in case of severe damage
Yeah.
from what hell that happened at Knoxville, for example, that picture you see, they had a hailstorm come through years ago, and
Yeah.
every airplane got affected except for the ones that were underneath those.
Mhm.
So anything that was on the ramp, like you see in that same photo, those are all damaged.
I would say there's definitely more flexibility in what you can do with these versus a traditional T hangar. this is just an informational thing.
No, I'm asking your permission to request.
Oh. Oh, okay.
It has to go through the first stage with you and then go before, your recommendation goes before council. So whether you recommend it or not.
I'll entertain a motion. So
Is it my turn? So moved.
a motion to, I guess the motion is to direct,
To request.
to request a
a
grant
for a planning
to
board.
plan these plain boards.
Mhm.
Second.
That motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Motion approved. Great. Under other business and announcements, there's nothing, but does anyone have other business or announcements to make?
Do you know where we are with MTSU on seeing the final elevations of what they're gonna have over here? Isn't there a timeline on that? They're supposed to have that back to us within a period of time.
They have brought us we had a meeting, then they gave us what they had hoped for, but that's the one that they missed by about $22 million. When they finally put it down and got it out on the street, or not on the street, but when it came before and they started doing the proper estimates, when it went from the design table to the bid side of the house, that's what they missed by $22 million.
So we have nothing to look at. They've gone back to the drawing board, or where are we at with this now?
We've got a big meeting tomorrow to kind of reevaluate because we're starting to chop the program up into phase 1 and phase 2. So I know they're working on some initial sketches right now as it's being redeveloped. I can ask tomorrow if there's anything that can be shared at
Yes.
this point. A lot of it now, I don't know if there's any renderings, but it's just a lot of sketch type at this time.
Yeah, but I think that footprint now is completely full. What they initially showed us, because that was the first time I got a chance to see it, and I had some concerns with what they had given to us to look at. So I'm sure they took those concerns and took the fact that they missed it by that much.
We did give them feedback on that.
Yeah, okay.
Can we request to have an update on the next board meeting on the agenda next week?
If
We can. I
You
don't know
think
if
you
we'll
can?
know a lot, but
Oh,
We can
yeah,
definitely
I'm happy to ask to see what I can share after tomorrow's meeting.
That doesn't need a motion or anything, right?
no, it's just.
Okay, brings us to the best part of the day. Call this meeting adjourned.
thank you.
Welcome again, Brad.
All
Thank
right.
you for your service here.
You almost did that hour.
Did I just miss it? Darn it.
Paul, can we have a meeting
Absolutely.
with, council for Cooper Steel?
Gotcha. Understood. That's a good.
I meant to tell you earlier. Eric, I need your signature on 2 things for you.
Okay.
They are not signed, so if you want, we gotta make sure that if you want something that's signed, you need to check with Miss Lisa on that. You'll have to check with Lisa for sign, which I think she's getting right now. Let me see if I get-
I got a balloon. There you go.
Okay.